Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chic Geek. How are you today? Happy Friday. I hope you are all doing very well. We are very excited to be hosting BTS with Sonova today. We are going behind the scenes and kind of learning from three women who have built their careers in software development. So, before we get started, I just want to share a little bit about the BTS series. It stands for Behind the Scenes, and we want to take you backstage to technology driven companies because this is a vibrant ecosystem with lots of amazing opportunities, and we want to showcase the many ways you can get involved in technology careers. This series dives deep into the people, culture, and leadership of technology companies, as well as the opportunities to join the team. Chic Geek exists because there's not enough women in technology, and the women we do have are leaving. We're here to change that. We believe that through connection building, peer elevation, and community support, we can shift the narrative. We are determined to help women find their future and forge new paths in technology because this will have a bold and beneficial impact on the future and the tech that defines it. Chic Geek stands for diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. And we support reconciliation, believing we all have a role to play in building harmonious relationships between Aboriginal and non Aboriginal people. A land acknowledgement is a traditional custom of Indigenous people when welcoming outsiders onto their land and into their homes. To build respectful relationships, acknowledging the land is an important part of reconciliation. It honors the authentic history of North America, its original people, and tells the creation story of our country that has historically been missing. So, in gratitude, I acknowledge that even though we're digital today, this event is being hosted on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, and the Métis Nation Region 3. We acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, and play on this beautiful land and who honor and celebrate this territory. Thank you for your enthusiasm and commitment to join us for this digital event hosted on the beautiful lands of Treaty 7 territory. Today, we are going behind the scenes with Sonova. Specifically, we're learning from women who are building their careers in technology and software development. I'll do a brief intro to our speakers and then we'll move into the panel discussion and we'll save some time at the end for audience questions. So please feel free to put them in the chat throughout the discussion. We'll be monitoring and we'll integrate them at the end. And lastly, we will follow up by sending a short survey to everyone who's registered. And it's important, we hope you'll take a few minutes to fill it out because at its core, Chic Geek was an initiative built by the community for the community, and your input does continue to shape us. So please feel free to share your thoughts. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to just lay out some ground rules for the event. I ask that our panelists share candidly and vulnerably so we can have a meaningful discussion. And I also ask that our audience members be present and participate. You know, it's easy to answer a few emails during an online event, but when you're part of Chic Geek, you own a piece of it, and we ask that you show up for us. And finally, we hope that you'll adopt our values while you're with us. We are brave explorers. We step outside our comfort zones and take bold risks. We refuse to let fear stand in our way, and we don't shy away from tough conversations. We are relentlessly curious. We are inquisitive question askers, and we are always learning something new, whether it's professionally or personally. We're constantly educating ourselves and evolving from our discoveries. We believe in peer elevation. At Chic Geek, we believe that platforms are meant to be shared, and we're always here with a helping hand, and we're not afraid to ask for one either. And we strive for candid and connected relationships. We create meaningful, intentional relationships with other wonderful humans. And we know that to do this also requires a deep connection to self, so not to forget that self-awareness piece along the way. With that, I'm thrilled to introduce Sonova and our wonderful speakers today. Sonova exists to help everyone enjoy the delight of hearing and live a life without limitations. They envision a world where everyone can hear and that there's a solution to hearing loss problems around the world. This is a company that stands for accessibility and innovation. One of its core values is we care. And this comes out in the way Sonova treats its people, customers, and community. Sonova is a technology-driven hearing solutions company, and they are hiring software developers, architects, mobile developers, machine learning engineers, IT specialists. If you're looking for a career with impact, you're in the right place today because we're talking with 3 women who have built their careers in software development and their experiences at Sonova. So with that, I want to pull up Millie Prabhakiran on stage. Millie, I'm adding you here. Millie is a software project leader at Sonova with 24 years experience. She's held various roles in software development, including management positions like technical lead, scrum master, and technical delivery manager. She also has a wide industry experience, having worked for companies in telecommunications, airlines, network security, and insurance before joining Sonova. Hey, Millie, it's nice to see you here today. Millie, I'm just going to get you to unmute and we'll make sure your sound works.
Hey,
Awesome.
can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having me. Looking forward
Next
to this.
up, thanks, Millie. We're going to bring Leanne Prasad on stage. Here we go. Hey, Leanne.
Hi, Kylie.
So Leanne has built a 13-year career at Sonova, and she recently transitioned from senior software developer to software project leader, a role very similar to Millie's, but on a different team. And in her new capacity, Leanne will bring products to life by guiding requirements into robust software products with her team. Leanne is known for caring deeply about her team, the work they do, and being especially tenacious about how the work is accomplished, tackling design and process improvements surrounding many complex requirements. I love that. And Leanne, welcome, welcome. And lastly, we're going to bring Alana on stage. Alana Kirshner has a background in biomedical engineering and has spent her entire career focused on developing medical devices that deliver real value to patients. She's worked almost exclusively in product development with roles as mechanical design engineer, project manager, quality team engineering lead, and regulatory manager. At Sonova, she's a software requirements engineer, which means that she works closely with product development to ensure that user requirements are captured and translated effectively into technical specifications. How cool is that? Alana, welcome.
Thanks, Kylie.
So I'm excited to hear from these inspiring women today. So let's get the discussion started. I want to help the audience understand, what it is exactly that you do in your roles. So if you were to organize your work hours into a pie chart, what would those big headings be where you're spending your time? And Alana, why don't we start with you?
Sure, sounds great. So I'd say about 30% of my time is spent collaborating with product managers in marketing to ensure that requirements are adequately defined and communicated across the teams. A similar 30% would be collaborating with project leads such as Leanne and Millie and other developers to ensure that the same goes for the specifications for a product. And then roughly 10% is getting input and driving discussions from other stakeholders such as quality or regulatory or software testing. Another 20% would be driving process improvements. And then the final 10% would be just continuous improvement and learning.
Amazing. Alana, thank you very much for outlining that. Leanne, how about you? How would you describe those key buckets in your role?
Mm-hmm. So in no particular order, I spend time on maintenance of our product backlog. So the work that we need to accomplish as developers. Documentation, so that covers like technical documentation, decisions, specifications, regulatory documentation. Another bucket is team improvement topics. Another one being like code reviews and design input conversations. I have a bucket I called support. So that could be customer escalations, clarifications for the test team, other teams, basically just a heap of unplanned conversations. And then the last one is just filled with miscellaneous recurring team meetings. Yeah.
Yes, which happens.
Yeah.
Millie, now I know you're kind of a couple years ahead of Leanne in a similar role. Do you have anything to add to that? Do your buckets change given, that extra experience from your side?
No, I'd say it's very similar to Leanne's. Maybe one thing I'll add, especially relevant to the project I'm on now, is a lot of dependency management with teams outside of software. There's a lot of firmware and hardware teams and acoustic teams outside of our team, which we have to work, very heavily with and plan and manage those dependencies. So that takes up a good chunk of my day as well.
Cool. Thank you, Millie. It does sound like there is that balance between the technical work and then the people and supporting your teamwork as well and collaboration. So that's really cool to hear. I, want to know what do you love about your roles? Like, why are you excited about the work that you're doing? Millie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I just love to set up teams, enable them to be like super efficient, right? So, and I also believe that's one of my strengths, and I have a lot of opportunity here in Sonova to do that. So I'm the project lead for two teams, and I have the opportunity to make that happen every day. And there's another really little thing I should mention is every time we have a new feature and I get to try it on the hearing aid, amazing. I just cannot describe those words. It makes it all worth it.
Cool. You're getting me excited, even just hearing you talk about it, Millie. Leanne, how about you?
So, as a software developer, a lot of your time is spent transforming ideas into functioning implementations of that idea. And it's cool that that happens just through like your thoughts and your knowledge, and I guess also your fingers and the tools that are available to you. But as you build it bit by bit, there's this sort of like rush of excitement every time you hook something up and it works the way you intended. And this is always satisfying to me, like this idea that I made that work. It doesn't really get old. And I would add to that that I have the pleasure to work with a lot of great people who care as much as I do about the work that we do. So for me, like this is key. This feeling of community, like to feel valued and that my voice is heard, and that especially that other people like match my effort and passion for what we do. That kind of fuels me. And then like when you add to that, knowing that what we do, like the products that we create, help improve people's life. Just when you add those things together, right? Like the excitement of the invention and the community and the feel good of it, like those things together, like that's why I'm passionate about working at Sonova. It's a great combo.
I love that. I think, we talk to a lot of women who always want to make an impact. And like there's this trifecta here at Sonova around, it's a mission-driven company, the team, and then kind of the creation of new innovative technology. Thank you, Leanne. Alana, what about you? What do you love about what you do?
Yeah, these ladies said it very well. I'd say that I really love working with a team and with a diverse group of minds. So everybody's working in the same direction to make sure that we're developing the right products and in the right way. So like Leanne said, there's really nothing quite like that feeling of developing products that make a difference in people's health and the quality of their life. And I think that in my role in particular, I'm passionate about it because making sure that the requirements and specifications are defined accurately is really, in my mind, one of the beginning steps of making sure that you're going through development successfully.
It's interesting hearing that, Alana, because you have a very clear understanding of where you fit and how your role specifically leads to the overall product success. And then you can see that impact. So it's really cool that you have that visibility. Thank you. Leanne, I know that you've recently transitioned from a senior developer to a software project leader. And I think career transitions are something that our audience is very interested in. Many women are wondering, like, how do I do that? What do I need to do? What skills do I need? how would you explain the skills needed to be successful in order to make that transition?
So I think, like, for my transition from development to project lead, there's this nice overlap of skills as well as fresh challenges that come into play. So I don't know what it would be like coming into an organization as a project lead without the background and domain knowledge and knowledge of how our team operates. So that's something I was that you can ask Millie about, because that's what she did. But having that insight lets me focus on the parts of the job that are new to me. So like as a developer, like a lot of your time is spent problem solving, coding, mentoring others, and providing guidance on how to approach their tasks. You know, there's this experience that helps identify areas for improvement, not only like in our code base, but within the team, and speaking up about those things and driving improvements in those areas and orchestrating development of one or more features. So like those are the skills that I had, I think, as a senior developer that helped me out as a project lead. And then like transitioning into project leadership, that technical work becomes like a lot more abstracted, and I need to be more in tune with things like our business needs and timelines, and the types of details I was shielded against as a developer. And I need to stop like saying I'm going to do everything myself and be willing to delegate responsibilities, which I kind of previously hoarded for myself. And you know, there's new stuff like navigating conflicting priorities, you know, is a big one, because there's so many moving pieces of a project now, and communicating that effectively to the rest of the team. So there's some new things that I'm working to get better at, but I'm lucky that I can leverage a lot of the experience I had to make this transition more natural.
Very cool, Leanne. Millie, I saw you nodding while Leanne was speaking, and I'm just wondering if you have anything else to add about, how can you make those transitions? What skills make you successful in this kind of lead role versus a senior developer?
Yeah. So my journey is different from Leanne. So I come from a web background. I moved into a mobile PL role. Very, very different from what I'm used to, right? So I would say the first thing is for anyone, just generally speaking, I think that self-awareness of what you really want to do. And, when I made this conscious decision to come to Sonova, so you kind of need to know what you really want to do. And then what are your strengths and weaknesses? And I think it's not a one-time assessment even, right? So when you first, take the leap, you kind of need to know whether you're going to a leadership role. You cannot be a specialist anymore. You have to be a generalist. You need to know enough about basically everything, and also sort of hold back, not try going deep, and that becomes meddling too, right? So that fine balance between being you have to be a generalist. You really have to give up being a specialist at this point, right? When you decide to make that transition. And another thing which I think is important is you really have to assess your skills every day. And I'm noticing this especially for me in Sonova, it's a little bit more than I've done in my past. That's because of the nature of the work. I've never worked with hardware, firmware, and software teams before. I've really done mostly only software. So this helps me, or this makes it really important for me to just keep assessing, what are the skills I lack, what are the skills I have, and then just keep honing that literally every day, right? So because as soon as you step into leadership role, it's really not about you. Your success is the team's success, right? So we have to understand what skills are needed to make ourselves successful doing that to support the team.
Millie, I love, the way that you talk about that inner work, and that how important it is to keep coming back to it. Can you give us some examples of what kind of inner work that you've done or self-discoveries you've had that help you in your day-to-day work as a project lead?
Yeah, generally speaking, when I was looking for a job, just before I started Sonova, I started thinking about what do I really want to do, right? So I think one big decision was I want to do something really meaningful that touched somebody's life, right? Like that was very important. So that helped me choose a place like that to work. And thank you for Sonova. Thank you to Sonova for having me. And since then, I think every day my my leadership team would attest to this. Almost every day, I'm like, okay, I lack the skill, I need this. So it's very continuous. I can't think of one particular example, but I don't know anything about acoustics. I've never been exposed to audiology before, so that was learning. Mobile development is brand new to me, so that's learning. So yeah, anything I touch here is new to me. So it's putting the effort, and I also came to realize I'm not going to learn all of this in a day, in a year. It's 2 years, and I'm still learning. So that acceptance also is a little bit hard, but I'm trying to get there because you're so eager, you want to do the right thing for your team, but you also worry about lack of skills, right? So yeah, and one thing I should mention, my peers and my leaders have been very supportive of how I can get there, right? So they understand that my background is different too. So it's a huge team effort. My peers, my team members on the mobile team have been so great just to help. And I ask the stupidest questions in meetings. Audiology, everything comes up: hardware, audiology, firmware, everything except web development, which I know and understand, come up, right? So it's learning. I think something I need to learn and understand is to be more patient, and I'll get there. But it's been very, very rewarding too, right? I've completed I think I'm on my 4th project here in Sonova, and successfully delivered the previous ones, but still it's a lot of learning, especially with the complexity we deal with. And also it's healthcare, right? Like you're building something that you would actually put in a patient's ear, and the criticality that comes with that. And even though I'm part of an accessory, which is the mobile app, we fit into that big picture too, right? So yeah, I think it's just accepting, learning, being patient, and continuously assessing your skills and building on that is what I would summarize.
That's amazing, Millie. It's interesting that you've had a 24-year career and, you're still like, there's so much to learn. And I think that is reflective of technology careers in
Yes.
general. This really ties into Alana because Alana, you started at Sonova 4 months ago. You went through the remote onboarding. I would love to know how you've navigated like all the learning that needs to happen when you step into a new role. How was that experience for you?
Well, it's certainly not past tense. It's an ongoing journey. And I hope continues to be, like Millie said, in a later stage in your career and always learning. But certainly information overload can be daunting, but this isn't unique to software. What might be somewhat unique to software, as Millie alluded to, was the complexity of the system that we're working with and the interrelation of our various products, whether that be the firmware on the hearing devices or the software on our mobile apps and the fitting software. Um, I've found that it's important to keep in mind that as much as you want to ramp up and become an expert as it all, you just really need to know where to find the experts and rely on their wisdom. This is really critical. Um, I've always tried to be intentional in the questions that I'm asking and the way that I'm framing them so that I can ensure that I'm getting the information that I need, as well as respecting that people's time is valuable. One thing that I will say with a larger company like Sonova is that there are many people to learn from and lean on for support. So, on the flip side, coming from my recent experience in a startup, it can be challenging to adjust to a much more dispersed structure of this knowledge in a larger company. So, you may need to speak with 5 different people to get the full picture of what you're looking for versus just approaching one individual, which there's pros and cons to both of those, but it's just an adjustment and learning how to make sure you're getting all the information that you need. But I try to remind myself that if I weren't feeling overwhelmed, then I'd probably be doing something wrong in the onboarding process. And I think, in my opinion, the first and foremost thing to learn when you're joining a new organization is where to go and who to talk to get the information that you need, and also what channels are best to communicate with the various teams within the organization.
Right. Okay. So that's, yeah, because there is such a volume of information to get through, but those tips right there, Alana, will help you be able to navigate what's really important. How do I get it fast and efficiently so that I can do my role really well? So I
Right.
really like those tips for the audience. Thank you. This is a question for all of you. Because, we often think about technical roles and then we have an assumption that you're only writing lines of code and that you're not collaborating and there's not a people side to it. I'd love to hear from you about what the most valuable non-tech skill is that you bring to your teams. Leanne, why don't we hear from you first?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I think it's accountability. So I'm not the most technically skilled developer on my team, and I'm fine with that. Like, that's not my value proposition here. An area that I do bring a lot of value is that when I say that I'm going to do something, I actually make sure that gets delivered. So, I mean, that's understanding what must be done, why it must be done, when, and making sure I proactively communicate any roadblocks I have so that no one else is using their sort of mental bandwidth to keep me on track. So I think an important part of accountability is admitting when you're stuck, right? And then just taking the necessary steps to do something about that. And I think this is a skill that I see developers struggle with, but I would just say that like admitting you're stuck isn't really a sign of weakness. I think it's a form of accountability. Like saying like I've identified that I've overcommitted or I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not going to deliver. And, this isn't a great use of my time. So I'm reaching out to do something about it. So that's why we're a team, I think.
I can see why you are in a project lead role now, because that accountability piece, not only for yourself, but for your team too, probably helps move things forward. So I love that because usually, accountability is not like a sexy, like, here's my big superhero strength, but I love that you own it and the way that you tell that story. So thank you, Leanne. Millie, what about you? What's your greatest strength, non-tech strength that you bring to the team?
I think, like Leanne, I take pride in being the get it done type of girl. So, and maybe in addition to that, I should add, I always like to, and almost deliberately, look at the big picture and see how, my team or my work or how that fits in. Say, for example, we're working on a project that, most of our projects here at Sonova run for 2-3 years because of the nature of the work, right? So the delivery date is probably a year or two later, but the sprints we plan now, the work we do now impacts that date, right? And also how our team contributes to the big picture. So there's sort of many aspects to the big picture itself. I think it's I believe that I have the strength there to look at the big picture, and so that helps me look forward a little bit and plan and organize our work so that we fit well in the big picture.
Interesting. Okay. Leanne and Millie, I see this theme between the two of you of like this mindset around how can I help others? And it's kind of bridging those gaps. Alana, I'd love to hear from you too, in your role that's slightly different, what your greatest non-tech strength is.
Yeah, certainly. I'd say one of my strongest non-technical skills is being able to synthesize and communicate information in a digestible manner to various different teams. So I think it's really important to simplify communication and present the most critical aspects of information in a meaningful way, whether that means tailoring it specifically for various stakeholders or teams that you're working with, or transforming something that's seemingly very complex and lengthy into something that's a bit more clear and concise and unambiguous. So it's not really a coincidence that I find myself in the role that I'm in because I think this is a very critical skill for requirements and specifications, not only for successful development, but also because it's required for regulatory requirements for medical devices.
Okay, so if we have audience members who are people who like to take big, messy, complex things and make them simple and clear to understand, then they should be looking at roles like yours, is what I'm hearing, Alana.
Yeah, that definitely is a skill set that you would do well in a role like mine if you're passionate about that like I
Love that.
am.
Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of like knowing yourself, what other value you bring to the team. I know that like professional development is a really big piece of the culture at Sonova, and in fact, Sonova has its own what they call MAP framework. Leanne, can you tell us a little bit about what the Sonova MAP framework is?
Yeah, so Sonova Map is about taking the time to reflect on the direction that you'd like to see your career go, um, with a little bit of structure that's outlined by Sonova, and then using that to have like an open and honest conversation with your manager about that direction, so that it's all on the table. So it's a question of whether you want to master complexity within your role, increase your breadth of knowledge, deepen your expertise, or like refine your leadership skills. So within these categories, you're kind of defining what success looks like and like concretely how you plan to get there. So for example, right now I'm working on a couple topics related to mastering complexity and one for leadership with goals to meet those criteria within the next like 6 or 12 months.
And how do you know which areas to focus in? Is that only driven by you, or is that, based on contributions from your peers and leaders?
That's a good question. Like I've always thought of it as driven by myself, but I don't see a reason why you couldn't consult your peers and what would be a good fit for you. And it's all about having like just an open conversation about your direction. So obviously your manager's a big part of that as well. But I really do think this is meant to be driven by where you see yourself.
Cool. Okay. So just so the audience knows too, anyone who has registered for this event on the Chic Geek website, if we've got your email, we'll be sending out a follow-up email that will include the Sonova MAP framework so that you can take a look at how they do it and maybe even apply that to your own career. So do make sure that you're registered on our website. We'll provide the link in chat as well. So Leanne, thanks for walking us through that. I'd love to know, Millie, what do you have kind of as focus areas on your MAP framework right now? How are you thinking about career and professional development?
Yeah, sure, Kelly. So, like I was telling you earlier, right? There is still so much for me to learn here at Sonova, and so when I completed my first year, I think that was around the time we were trying to create this plan together with my manager. So at that time, like I was explaining earlier, I struggled a lot to feel confident and do a good job because of the knowledge gaps. I didn't know the industry or the hardware, firmware. Like I felt like there was so much knowledge gap. And going back to what Leanne was listing out as the four directions we could go using this map, right? So I think they are mastering complexity, broadening scope, deepening expertise, and growing leadership. I felt like I needed to do all of them to be successful in my job, right? And as a project leader, you think, at least I thought I needed all four of them. So and then that's why my manager came in, and it was so simple that he said it so simply. He said, well, Millie, it's a compass. And when you look at the map, you can see it's really a compass. Well, can you go in four directions and be good at it? Like, can you actually do that well, right? So that it was as simple as that. That just helped me think. I really only had to just glance at it one more time to know that what I wanted to pursue was to grow my leadership. Everything else, I would get just enough to perform that role. So it really helped bring a lot of clarity to that little bit of even a struggle I had, just because there was so much I needed to ramp up, but I didn't know what to focus on. So it was really a good tool. And yeah, I think it's a great idea. You guys are sharing it out with the audience. It could just apply in any situation. It's not just for us here in Sonova. So I think it's a really good tool.
Thank you, Millie. It's great to hear it's a good reminder that we don't need to do everything exceptionally, that really it's impossible, but to focus and know like, where do you add the most value? What is innate to yourself? That's a great takeaway for all of us in the audience today. Just a reminder, folks, that if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. We're going to be answering them. I'm just reading one right now from Tiffany, just on the note of the MAP framework. She wants to know if it's used for all members on a team or project at Sonova. Anyone here can weigh in.
Yes, it is. It is part of our development framework. So when we actually, every year, when you kind of create a development plan, you sit down with your manager, and this is a really useful tool they could use
Mhm.
to sort of focus at least the next year. It just gives you direction.
And Alana, I know that you joined at a time kind of outside of the cadence of the MAP framework, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the timeline and the structure around that and when you will be kind of putting that into practice too.
Right, yeah. So, I guess somewhat unfortunately, I haven't been exposed too much to the map. I mean, I'm aware of um, the different areas on the compass, as we've been calling it today. And I love that, Millie. That's such a good way of putting it. But I haven't developed my framework yet, and I think the next cycle, which will be sometime mid next year, if I'm not mistaken, I'll do that more formally. But now it's just keeping those in mind with conversations with my manager.
Very cool. Thank you, everyone, for sharing that. And I think it will be a great tool for the audience to use as well. Um, Alana, on that note, for anyone who might be interested in applying for a role at Sonova, what was your experience applying, interviewing? Can you share any tips with the audience on that front?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the hiring process was very different from any of my previous experiences, largely because it was all done virtually. So all my interviews were in video calls. So on one hand, it was nice because I got to see people's faces without masks and see their expressions. But on the other, it's of course nice to meet people in real life. Shake their hand the first time you meet them. But it was you had to adapt with the times, and I think that Sonova did a great job of making it still a very rewarding experience to go through the onboarding and through the interview process. Um, I had 3 interviews with Sonova. So the first one was with the hiring managers, one of whom is now my boss. The second interview was with the next one level higher of management. And then the third interview was with human resources. I'd say that during all of these, everyone made me feel really relaxed and welcome. And even though they were asking some tough questions, it was really more of a discussion. It felt like a kind of a two-way discussion versus a formal Q&A. So I left the interviews being like, well, I hope I get the job, but it was also great to meet these people because they were so nice to talk to, which is different from some experiences that I've had in the past. But my advice for anyone who is interested in applying for Sonova is to be confident in your skills, and make sure that you show your personality, and don't leave the interview without sharing what it is that you're passionate about.
Amazing. Those are great tips, Alana. I see Leanne and Millie nodding their heads on those. And I'm curious, Leanne and Millie, as project leads, so you guys are, kind of managing teams of people. Can you share a little bit of insight about, what kinds of people or traits and qualities that you're looking for on the Sonova team?
I think for our team, personality fit, and that does not mean that you need to have the same personality as everyone else, but just fitting in with the team, being a contributor, having some solid soft skills, like that is as important, if not more important, than technical skills. Like someone who's willing to learn, because it's an investment. Like the ramp up process on our team, it takes a couple of years. Like that's maybe daunting, but anyone is worth that investment if they're willing to learn, right? So I honestly think that fit is more important than the technical background, at least for the roles on our team. Yeah.
Cool, Leanne. Thank you. Millie, did you have anything to add?
No, I agree with what Leanne said. Maybe I should add, someone who shares the same passion, right? Because end of the day, what we build touches people in a very, very real way. It's not just software. So, yeah, I think someone who shares that passion and genuinely cares about the customer can make a big difference.
Cool. Thank you. Maybe just quick back to Alana. Was there a technical component to your interview?
Yeah, there was a more technical part of it. I mean, my role isn't extremely in-depth technical. There's no coding or anything of that sort in my role. It's a little bit higher level with the requirements and specifications, but certainly there are parts of it that were more technical in process and how you go through development and what the important stages and processes are to successfully develop a product. So um, part of it, actually, there was they presented me with a scenario that I had to kind of caught off guard with the scenario and had to say what I would do with it. And like when a PowerPoint presentation came up on the screen during the interview, I thought, oh, okay, wow, this is exciting and different.
But really, it's probably looking for how you reason through things and what your thought process is more than
Yeah,
the right
exactly.
answer.
Right.
Okay, cool. Thank you all for just sharing that insight for anyone who's really interested in kind of careers at Sonova. We will open it up to audience questions. And so feel free, folks, put them in the chat of your kind of respective platforms, and we'll address those together. I see a question here from Brendan. Thank you, Brendan. Any recommendations for creating a more collaborative development team as a leader? I find even in an agile environment, team members will get siloed into their sprint tasks. Millie and Leanne, can you weigh in on this?
Just looking for the unmute button. I think that it's a hard problem to solve. Like, as a developer who's been very siloed into the areas of expertise that I have, I just see it as like, it's not responsible to allow developers to get too siloed into their tasks. Like, knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer to other developers, especially in a time where there's a little bit of volatility and people coming and going, like, we can't let that happen as leaders. So we do a lot of pair programming. We have clear owners in areas that may oversee something, allowing other developers to contribute confidently in that area. And it's definitely a work in progress, even on our team. But yeah, we just see it as a weakness of the team, I guess, to let that happen, even though it's convenient to do so. Yeah.
I'd like to add, other than what Leanne said, team events, like, when this sprint planning, you do a demo, right? So that actually brings the team together, right? So sharing the bigger picture, whether, because everyone is building a small part of the system, right? So the team actually getting the big picture, understanding what part they're contributing to, I think will help a little bit. Yeah, and I agree with Leanne. It is a difficult problem to solve, but I think it's something as leaders we have to constantly do as well, right? So we have to find those opportunities every day to bring the team together. Code reviews take the silos away a little bit, where they actually see each other's work, and there's like design meetings, or whether they're refinement meetings. So those they get exposed to other things other than their own little piece of work.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is, as leaders, you lead by example and really kind of making opportunities for the team to collaborate. But I also heard peer reviews or code reviews and peer programming as two kind of techniques that can be used to build that collaboration. I'm curious, and maybe this is not like a question that can be answered, but whether those kinds of collaboration pieces are ever part of performance objectives and metrics, or if that's always just kind of work that's done on the side.
I don't think we have formal metrics around this, but I think there's recognition within the leadership team that these kind of events actually help the team, bring them closer. And I'll give you a small example. So one of the projects I'm working on is it's driven out of Switzerland. Our head office is there. So most of the teams part of this project resides there. So the app team is here in Kitchener. So there are times we have to intentionally shield the team from the bigger machine, right? So there are a lot of times we do that. But there was a time there was a discussion about how do we get the team to be aware of what's happening on the project. So we got the overall product manager to actually come in, and he talked a lot about this product, and sort of the passion behind how this product came to be, and how it's going to touch lives when it goes to the market. So that was a big hit on our team. Just feeling part of that big picture was good. So those are deliberate measures we take. Yeah, I don't think there's anything formal in place. It's just the culture, part of our leadership culture.
Cool. Okay. Melly, I mean, speaking of culture, I think, the audience would be interested in knowing, like, what is the culture at Sonova? How would you describe it? And maybe, Alana, we can actually start with your thoughts on that because, you kind of got a fresh perspective.
Certainly. One thing that I kind of knew this about Sonova before even starting at Sonova, which is one of the large reasons why I wanted to work here, is just the collaborative nature and how much support there seems to be for each other within the organization. So it's really a learning together mindset that I've found throughout my time working here, and everybody really wants each other to succeed and really cares about each other as people. So whether that's in considering what's best for you inside of work, but also outside of work. So I think it's very supportive and collaborative, and the company really lives up to what they share publicly in that value. That was something that I really had suspected was the case from learning about the company from the outside, and it truly is from the inside.
Thank you, Leanne. Or thank you, Alana. Sorry, I was thinking about Leanne and Millie too, because, from like Leanne, you've been at Sonova for 13 years. And like, what are your thoughts on the culture and how that kind of manifests within the teams?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of honed in on the collaborative nature of it as well. And like it's a big organization, but we're smaller teams within it. And I kind of observed that we have maybe like a lack of process rigidity sometimes, which has benefits and downsides. And we're not just like robots following some sort of strict process. And what I think is cool that when there's lack of strict process, even without that, like good teamwork and collaboration always prevails. And then sort of when we wrap up, we always like reflect on how that went and take meaningful steps towards resolving what didn't go well, and then just kind of celebrate what did go well and put the next steps in place so that it goes even better next time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, the teamwork just seems to always prevail over any frustrations, or it's nice.
And I really love that component about team and collaboration, because often when, we're looking at our next career or, where am I going, we consider what is the role, or we consider what is the company. But I think we need to be thinking more about who's on the team and who am I going to get to work with, because that is such a big part of the work and the influence on your career there. So I really like that perspective, Leanne. Thank you. We've got another question here from the audience. Can you tell us about, a moment recently that you might have had where you didn't feel confident in your work? And, how are you able to overcome that? That's a tough one. But I do feel like there are many moments when, even myself, I feel small. And that is a very shared experience. So any insight here would be appreciated. Anyone want to kick us off?
I mean, I can start maybe a little less valuable than speaking from more experience, because when you're new at a company, even if you're not new in your career, there's certainly a lot of times where you feel that. In terms of navigating that, I think that it's just a matter of, similar to what Leanne said before, is admitting that. And the whole idea of faking it till you make it, there's no need to fake it. Just get the help that you need, and be honest about that. And in the end, you're going to add a lot more value. And so I think that just being honest about needing support in different areas, and open about what you know and what you don't know, because you do know a lot. It might not be what you need to know at one time, but you'll be able to add value in those areas at another time. And in the meantime, you might need help on what it is that you're working on.
Yeah. Alana, thank you. I think that, even your response speaks to that kind of collaboration and support culture at Sonova, because, there sounds like there's a lot of safety to be able to ask for help, which might not be the case in every company, but I love that that comes out so strongly here. Leanne or Millie, anything else to add there around moments when you might not feel confident and how to overcome them?
Yeah, I fully agree with Elena. Like in the moment, if you don't know what to do, just be honest about it, and just let everyone know that you'll get back to them. Or yeah, there's definitely no point faking it, because yeah, there's no way you'll get out of that, right? So, but like say in the moment you handle it, but then later, I think it's good to just step back and see, okay, what is it I need to, because there would be little questions that, or small little things you cannot anticipate. You're not going to know all the answers, but I think Leanne touched on this before, knowing who to talk to and things like that, right? So that'll help you if you don't know the answer, if you know who to go to, because that's how I'm trying to find confidence right now, right? So I know exactly who to go to when I'm stuck. So I think that that would help give a little bit of a confidence boost, and don't fear to just say, I'll get back to you, right?
That's perfect, Millie, and thank you for that reminder. You don't need to know everything, but know who to go to for help. If you can work on that, then that's a great tool in your tool belt. We've got another question here. What advice would you give to someone new looking to transition into tech, especially in terms of landing that first job in the industry? It's overwhelming seeing the requirements on job postings. You need to know everything, like we've talked about, for entry-level positions, especially after doing a fast-tracked short program. So any insight on landing that first role, maybe as a junior developer or something similar? Leanne?
It's been so long since I've interviewed for roles. But like, I would apply anyway. Like, I don't get a say in the job postings that we put out as an organization, but I am certain that the people that we hire do not hit every single bullet point on those job requirements. There's just no way. Like, it may depend on the organization, but like I said, for us, I feel like a good personality fit and the willingness to learn those skills far outweighs having those skills. But yeah, it's definitely not a fake it till you make it situation. Like, do not fake it. Just be honest about what you do and you don't know, and yeah, just present your value proposition. And maybe it's not a specific skill that's listed there, but it's something valuable that's different.
Thank you, Leanne. Alana?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, not unique to Sonova, but any job posting is more like a wish list of, if we could have everything, this is what we want. Not necessarily that you would expect everybody to have that full list of items. But I think when I think back to when I was trying to land my first job, it I found that it was helpful to highlight my skills, like especially when you don't have a whole lot of experience that's relevant. Um, having more of a skills-based resume versus an experience-based resume, I found was kind of a game changer for me. I remember I learned about that in university, and at first I was a bit hesitant to just completely revamp my resume to a more skills-based one. But I have received positive feedback on that, because I think that it doesn't really matter so much what your experience it is. It's more the skills you got from that experience. So I think, especially if you're changing the industry that you're working in, that could be a good technique to set you apart.
Cool, Alana. I actually haven't heard of that, like that skills-based versus kind of an experience-based. So that's definitely something for folks to look into. Thank you, Alana.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that in those junior roles, sometimes if you're applying to a ton, it's really overwhelming and exhausting to be doing that. Millie, like, do you have any advice there around maybe being more targeted?
Maybe just to add to that, and this probably doesn't come easy if you're at the entry level of your career. It probably comes with more maturity, but understanding what it is you're applying to, right? You're probably desperate for a job. You're randomly applying, but maybe even stepping back and just thinking, not looking just at that company or that role, just that role or the technology, but look at a company and also understand, like, is this a place you want to just go gain some experience or somewhere you really want to make a career. So understanding those and actually preparing for the interview for that, towards that, I think would really be helpful. And I think another thing is network, right? Like you just build your network, and if someone trusts you and they think you're up for the job, they would put in a reference, right? So that may be a good way.
Thank you, Millie. Yes, I love that point about network. Leanne, I see you're unmuted. Did you have anything else to add there?
I couldn't resist because like I came into Sonova in a much different position than I have today, which wasn't even necessarily the position that I was looking for out of school. But if you get into a good organization, there's always opportunity to transfer within the organization when the time is right for you, right? Like if you don't have the experience for a certain role yet, you could ask, like, is there a different role that would be more fitting for me for the next, whatever, 2 years, 3 years until I'm ready? Because we're looking for the right people, even if you're not there yet.
Right. Okay. So network from Millie. Don't forget to network, but also be open-minded about the inroad. It doesn't need to be the perfect title or role. You know, that could lead to a lot of different places. So thank you for that reminder, Leanne. That's really good. Folks, this is where we're going to end our Q&A session. So just to wrap it up, you know, we're kind of nearing the top of the hour. I want to extend a huge thank you to Millie, Alana, and Leanne for sharing their insights and experiences with us. If you are working in software development already and you do want to share your story with other women, I'd encourage you to sign up as a mentor with our career pathing program. So I'm just going to pull up that slide. Here we go. And so this is kind of an opportunity to be like Millie, Leanne, and Alana today and guide other women in their journeys through technologies. We ask for 30 minutes of your time once a month, and we'll connect you with a new woman in tech who's trying to navigate her own career. That's kind of my ask to the community today. And if you have enjoyed this event, please do take a few minutes to answer the post-event survey, which should be in your inboxes now. Feel free to leave some kind words for our speakers if you enjoyed their insights. We will pass that on directly to them too. Our next BTS series is taking place on Friday, January 21st, and we're taking you behind the scenes with Mintex, a company in the cybersecurity space. So stay tuned for that. You'll be hearing from us in January. And again, thank you everyone for joining us here today. Happy Friday and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much for having us, Kylie.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.